Conditions continue to improve across the Atlantic as tropical development chances slowly start to increase. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Hat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a few things that we're going to be talking about with you today. First off, we are going to be talking about the main development region and talking about conditions to see how things are going as we continue to see more and more data come in and give us a bigger update on what might be happening later down the line in the season, as well as what might be happening later this week. So we're going to be diving through all of that right here and talking about that. But before we do that, we are closing in on 15,000 subscribers. We are less than 100 subs away. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. It would mean so much to me if we get hit 15K in the next few days or so. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and tell all your friends about this channel and have them sub too. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. Starting off right here, what we're going to do very quickly is we're going to read out what's going on with the NHC. We have a couple new areas of interest that we talked about yesterday that are going on in parts of the Eastern Pacific. We're going to be reading those, and then we're going to go ahead and get to the main meat of the video. But let's go ahead and get through these, and let's go ahead and briefly talk about and give the latest updates on it. First disturbance has right here, which is Invest 94E. This is what we got from the National Hurricane Center. An area of low pressure has formed along the tropical wave located several hundred miles south of the southern tip of Baja California. Although showers and thunderstorms remain disorganized, environmental conditions appear favorable for gradual development, and a tropical depression could form during the next day or two as the system moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Environmental conditions are forecast to be less favorable late this week. 40% chance in the next 48 hours and 40% in the next 7 days. So that's the latest that we have on our first one. The other one right here, which I find kind of interesting, is actually overlapping our first one right here. So let's go ahead and read this out for you too. A low-pressure system is expected to form late this week several hundred miles offshore off the coast of southwestern Mexico. Some slow development of the system is possible after that time, and it could become a tropical depression this weekend or early next week while it moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour. 40% chance of development in the next 7 days. So that's what we got over here in the Eastern Pacific. Now we're going to go ahead and shift over into the Atlantic. So here's what we got for you guys right here in this basin. We're going to go ahead and once again shift over to a few things that we're going to be looking at. Let's start with our U-wind and anomalies right here. Taking a quick gander at those. Things are definitely getting pretty interesting, and things look like they're going to start cooking up pretty soon in terms of what we're seeing. So basically, to sum it up for you guys, red equals more wind and less water temperature increase. Purple equals less wind and more water temperature increase in general. That's what we're paying attention to. This is kind of an indicator of how the trade winds and a bit of a bellwether as to what the wind shear is going to be doing. So taking a quick gander at that, for the purple, which is the below average anomalies that are U-wind right here, are pretty much spread off across much of the main development region, across much of the northern tropics and southern subtropical Atlantic over here in the basin, as well as in much of the Caribbean and the southern 2/3 of the Gulf region off the coast of the United States. You do see that increase at red right here, that increase of wind. There is a trough that is moving off the United States. Produced a lot of severe weather in parts of the East Coast yesterday. I know Ethan was out chasing that. It was the chase of his life. I'm going to just leave his video in the description down below if you want to go ahead and watch that, because it's some very crazy footage. But anyway, back to what we're looking at right here. Overall, across much of the tropics, you're definitely seeing that below average anomaly in kind of the right places, and also in the wrong places as well. You're seeing a lot of it happening in the northern tropics over here in the basin. You're seeing that anomaly happening near the Cabo Verde Islands as well. There was a little bit of an above-average anomaly, too, a bit further to the south as well, near the intertropical convergence zone, which I do find kind of interesting. We'll have to pay attention to see how that evolves in the next couple of weeks. And as we start getting into the to late June right here, definitely noticing more of a mixed bag. You're noticing a lot of this over here is starting to retreat. You're noticing a lot less purple and a little bit more red starting to fire off. And it's not just over here; it's across much of the main development region. The eastern MDR remains below average, but the Western MDR and parts of the Caribbean do get those above average anomalies right here. And you start seeing that really start to ramp up by the time we get to early July across much of the tropical Atlantic basin and in the Caribbean. Right here, that's definitely going to increase your shear and your trade winds right there that we're going to want to pay attention to. But ultimately, by the time we get past the first week of July, you see kind of this anomaly flip a switch right here. Before you're seeing below average, now you're seeing well above average in parts of the northern tropical Atlantic in the right here in the basin. I know I keep saying that, it kind of rolls pretty nice off the tongue. But ultimately, you do start seeing a bit more of an above average trade wind anomaly. That's kind of what you would typically see for El Nino. You do see some scattered below average La Ninas, right? Not La Ninas, but rather below average over here in parts of the main development region, parts of the southern Caribbean, and most importantly, in the subtropics right here, which I do find kind of interesting. Going forward, we'll have to see how this will pan out and how that will affect both the water temperatures and the shear over in that part of the Atlantic, because I was talking about this ad nauseum about how the water temperatures this year are a lot more concentrated in the tropical Atlantic than they were last year. We're going to talk more about that in a few minutes, but ultimately I am curious to see how this is going to pan out and how we're going to see things develop from here. But I would say once again, after I'd say June 28th is when those is when any chance of tropical development, at least outside of maybe the subtropics or outside of the Gulf region, that kind of spins up a little bit. It kind of slams shut for the most part over there for at least for the first couple of weeks of July, in my opinion. So we'll have to see what happens going forward. But also, I do want to take a quick gander at our wind shear as well, because let's go ahead and pull that up. Our bulk shear, 200 to 850 millibars right here across much of the Atlantic. The U-wind component definitely plays as a good bellwether as to what our wind shear is going to do, and you definitely are seeing that pocket starting to develop in parts of the eastern MDR as well as parts of the southwestern MDR off the coast of South America as well. That pocket, like I said before, peaks in the next couple of days. The shear kind of starts to move out of the area first, and then things start to ramp up from there. But ultimately, as we get towards the 26th is when that pocket starts to kind of degrade a little bit. You do see this part of the shear over here starting to impact the MDR. By the time we get to the 27th and the 28th, that pocket starts to really get underwhelmed, and it starts to get overcome by all this shear, and it kind of helps slam your potential tropical development potential shut right here, as this pattern that we're noticing is more trophy and ridgy. You're noticing a more wavelength pattern. It becomes more of a zonal pattern across much of the Atlantic, including the Caribbean and main development region. Effectively, what a zonal pattern is essentially a block of in the jet right here, a kind of a block of wind shear, I would say, in this example, where it doesn't go up and down like a wave, but rather it's more steady, and it's more and the flow is generally more steady in terms of its latitude, where it doesn't gain or lose that much. But ultimately, as time continues to progress, and as we start getting into the late June and going into early July, things become a lot more zonal. But watch what we're seeing in the first few days of July, ladies and gentlemen. You start seeing a trough and a ridge starting to build up in parts of the Atlantic right here, and you're definitely seeing that shear really starting to whip further up to the north off the coast of Africa over here, and that is going to play a potentially important role down the line from around July 5th onward. But taking a quick gander at this, yes, you have your Caribbean graveyard set up over here, but it really starts to get yanked further up to the north by the time we get to the central main development region, which I do find kind of curious and am wondering how long that's going to last. And based on what I'm seeing, it lasts throughout the entire first week of July, ladies and gentlemen. And you start seeing it just a lot of the shear just get carried further and further and further up to the north as well. That is a pretty big development in my opinion, and I'm going to talk about why in just a second, because ultimately, what I'm noticing with this is there's two things that I potentially am watching with this. The first is the shear exiting the main development region. What's that going to do to the intertropical convergence zone? What's that going to do to our tropical waves that are moving off the Sahel region of Africa? It's going to give them more time. It's going to give them the ability to consolidate and produce more convection. It's going to boost tropical activity in that part of the MDR. And why is that important? Well, down the line, that it helps moisten up the atmosphere, and it helps allow for later tropical development to take place. So that's kind of why I'm paying attention to that. And the second thing I'm watching is, how is this shear going to impact the dry air aspect of this? Because we talked about this a lot. We've talked about the Sahara dust. We've talked about how how it impacts the Atlantic. We've talked about a lot of that. But my main question and my main thing that I'm watching for this too is, what is this wind shear going to do to the dust? Is it going to do anything to it? Is it going to push it out and keep it in the subtropical Atlantic, or is it going to push towards Europe? And we've seen multiple scenarios of that with the models over the last few days. So we'll go ahead and show you that once again with the latest update. Here is our relative humidity. Dry air is still going to be infiltrating across much of the main development region. June 25th is when that moisture pocket reaches its peak, when the ITCZ also sees a boost in tropical activity as well. But by the time we get to the 28th, that dry air starts to entrain and kind of slam shut any tropical development over there too. But watch the June 29th onward. Look at this pocket right here of very dry air. That's most likely Sahara dust that's moving off the coast of Africa, off the coast of Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, those areas as well. And look at what we're seeing right here. June 30th, a huge boost of this dry air doesn't go into the tropical Atlantic. It actually shifts out into the subtropical Atlantic. Am I saying that the main development region is going to see a huge boost in moisture right away? Not necessarily, and I'll show you that in the precipitable water anomalies too. But ultimately, there is a major shift in the big Sahara air layer region right here, where instead of it moving into the deep tropics, a lot of that dry air gets pushed into the extreme northern tropics and the subtropics. And this is a trend I have noticed over and over and over again over the last few days. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, I want to see if this is just one run. And then the next time I was like, let's see how this goes. It's definitely starting to trend in that direction. Now we're seeing more and more of this, and I'm like, we're going to need to watch out for that. So ultimately, this doesn't really get pushed down into the main development region, and you're seeing a lot more moist air than what you would typically see across much of this region right here, with the exception of the Cabo Verde Islands over here. But look at this. You have the Azores high over here pushing this out and keeping it in the Atlantic, and then as time goes on, you have another high pressure system that's kind of strengthening, and it's allowing this dust to pretty much move north instead of south. Right here, and keeping it out of the tropical Atlantic. That is a very big development, and that starts July 3rd, going into the 4th, and going into the 5th. Yes, there is still going to be dry air across much of the tropics. I'm not saying that there isn't, but the big bulky stuff it looks for right now, is starting to shift away from the Atlantic, at least temporarily, and then moving towards Europe before another big boost of Sahara air starts to infiltrate around July 7th. This is a big development, ladies and gentlemen, because typically when it comes to stuff like this, you don't necessarily see this until, I'd say, around mid to late July, is when you start seeing a lot of that Sahara air and a lot of that dry air, instead of going into the Atlantic, get blocked by a high pressure system or a low pressure system and move and get pushed into Europe. This is late June, and the first couple of days of July this is happening. That's a pretty big update, and that is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Am I saying that that's going to automatically turn into tropical development? No, I am not saying that just yet. But what I am saying is you're going to want to watch this very closely. The next couple of weeks are going to be very critical. If this is a trend that continues and more of that dry air gets pushed into parts of the European continent, that's going to be a big update. That's going to be a problem. That potentially opens your window for tropical development right there. That's going to be a pretty big factor down the line. Right now, not necessarily the biggest factor, because it appears to me that this is going to be a one-time thing that lasts about 5 to 7 days. But if we see more and more of these runs with multiple showings of this getting pushed either out into the subtropics or out into Europe, that is going to be a big problem down the line. So, with that being said, pretty big update for you guys right here with the dry air aspect. What's our precipitable water anomalies? Very moist. A lot more moist than I think a lot of people expected, and the climatological average. Taking a quick gander at this, look at this. June 24th, June 25th, your precipitable water mean across much of the main development region surges. Yes, there's still dry air there. I'm not saying that there isn't. But the precipitable water anomalies and the amount of water that can mix down and increase moisture really increases dramatically. It does start to decrease a bit as we get to the 26th, 27th, and 28th. Look at this, guys. This is a pretty big situation that we're going to want to pay attention to. It does start to dry up by the time we get to the 28th and the 29th over here, but things continue to ramp up. And take a look at the first few days of July. A lot of that dry air stays further away from the tropics, gets pushed into the subtropics. You see those anomalies really starting to whip up over here. And you're not seeing it as much in much of the Atlantic. You are seeing it a bit more as we get to the 5th, 6th, and 7th. But look at this. A lot more moisture is coming off the coast of Africa. A lot more precipitable water is coming off the coast of Africa. A lot less dust is still, well, it's still coming in out of Africa. It's a lot less of it is going to be moving into the Atlantic for the first week or so of July, at least. That down the line is going to be an issue. If we see a situation where the dry air aspect of this really starts to decrease that a lot earlier than I think people expect, then at that point it's only the shear that's going to be stopping any tropical development. Stability issues, not necessarily a problem anymore, and that's because we're seeing more concentrated water temperatures. And this is what I mean by that. This is what we got for your SSTs right here. Across the deep tropics, warm water. Across areas outside of there, not as warm at all right now. It is still late June, so keep that in mind, but it's mainly concentrating in the tropics. Last year, a lot of the warmest water was concentrated in the subtropical Atlantic. That weakened your temperature gradient for water temperatures, and it made the Atlantic a lot more stable than forecasted. This year, a lot of that warm water is concentrated in the tropical Atlantic. That means there is a tighter tighter temperature gradient, and that also leads to a more unstable atmosphere for tropical. Not. But what I am saying is we may not see a necessarily active season, but I do think we're going to have more power with the hurricanes and the tropical cyclones that do develop than I think a lot of people expect. That is a kind of what I'm seeing based on the water temperatures, the dry air aspect of it are really starting to get more moist, and the wind shear. Things are starting to get move into shape slowly but surely, and the next 6 weeks are going to be a very big indicator of what this hurricane season is going to do. But already the early indicators are a bit concerning to me. And it's something I'll continue to watch for, and it's something I'll continue to keep you updated on here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. We are so close to 15,000 subscribers. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video as well. Tell all your friends, hey, subscribe to Pat's Path Predictor. He's a really cool guy. Subscribe to this guy. And speaking of cool stuff, Weather Center Nazario, or Naz Does Weather now, has agreed to come on this Friday's edition of the Triple P show. It's kind of preliminary. He's working out some things on his end, but he is most likely going to be on the Triple P show. I reached out to David Schlotthauer. I'm still waiting to hear back from him, but I will let you guys know. Hey, let David know and ask him if he wants to be on the show. I don't mind if you leave a few comments saying, hey, Pat's inviting you to this. This will be a fun thing for him. I would really appreciate if you guys did that and spread the word that we're doing this. Ethan and I have been working on this for months, and it's all coming together now. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.